Hello, welcome to Frag Out Radio, the video podcast that highlights people doing good things in the veteran community. Whether they're doing good things for themselves or doing good things for the community itself, we want to highlight people. So today's guest, retired Colonel, United States Marine Corps, now moving on to working his way up the ranks at Home Depot, Ted Studdard. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great, Nick. Thanks so much for having me on the show tonight.
Oh, thank you for coming on. Did I pronounce your last name right?
You aced it, my friend.
All right. I'm the king of butchering names, so I'm glad I got it right. So how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fantastic. And again, just thrilled to be here with you tonight.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. So we always kick the show off with you telling us a little bit about your background, where you came from, and then kind of like what you're doing now.
Okay. Well, my name's Ted Studdard. I was born in Commerce, Georgia, and I spent, my whole life. I lived in the same house, same bedroom, and never really expected to move. And then I joined the Marine Corps, and 17, 18 moves later, that changed. Oh, gosh. No, I enlisted in the Marine Corps right out of high school. In fact, I skipped school when I was a senior, and I signed up for the Marine Corps. I always wanted to be a Marine. My dad was a Marine. My uncle was a Marine. And you know what a major influence that is on your life. It's just something I always wanted to do, but I never really expected that to turn into a lifelong career. But I went to boot camp the day after I graduated high school. And after boot camp, I had the opportunity to go to the University of Georgia. While I was there, literally in the first week of class, I saw another Marine on campus. And I thought, well, gosh, I'm a Marine. He's a Marine. I should go say hello. So little did I know it was a recruiter. And it was an officer recruiter. And he said, well, what are you doing? I told him, my story, my brief history in boot camp. And he said, do you want to be an officer? And I thought, well, I'm a PFC right now. Let me see. Yes. So to make a long story short, during the first year I was at Georgia, I ended up getting discharged from my enlistment when I was accepted into Officers Candidate School. And while I was at Georgia, I went through the Platoon Leaders Course, PLC program for the Marine Corps. And when I graduated, I was commissioned as a lieutenant. Really, the first 10 years or so are pretty typical of what most Marine officers do. I started off at Bravo 112 in Hawaii. I was a platoon commander and executive officer. I was in Desert Shield and Desert Storm at that time. Then came back. I went and taught leadership and tactics at the basic school in Quantico, Virginia. And then from there, I went back to the fleet as a battery commander for Fox Battery, 2nd Battalion, 11th Marines in Camp Pendleton. And just had a great time there. And then from there, I had a really unique opportunity to go and teach tactics again, basically, for the Marine Corps at 29 Palms. So really, 29 Palms is our Desert Warfare Center, or at the time, all of our units came through there for combined arms exercise. So really, I got to perfect my craft every day out in the field, and it's just a phenomenal experience. I ended up going from there to the Command and Staff College, and during the first week, there were 10 of us that got a message, and we had been selected for recruiting duty. Last thing any Marine wants to do is go on recruiting duty, but I went on recruiting duty and was assigned to Recruiting Station Nashville. And the Marine Corps has 48 recruiting stations around the country. Probably the easiest way to think of it is really every state or geographic region has a recruiting station that's commanded by a major and then has a number of subordinate commands or subordinate elements that fall under that. And so my area was Tennessee, North Alabama, and North Mississippi. That was right before 9/11 happened. And right after, the bombings in New York, our first visitor, when I was as the CO, came out, and I thought, here's my chance. How can the Marine Corps go to war without me? And his name was General Humble. And I've been thinking about this all day, and General Humble was a war fighter from way back. He had a tremendous reputation in the Marine Corps. And late in the evening, we were walking down the street in Nashville, walking by Vanderbilt University, and this was the time to strike. So I rolled in and I said, "Sir, I'm ready to go. I've talked to my wife, Melissa. The family is good in Nashville. You send me wherever I need to go, and my family's good, and I'm sure we can get somebody to come in here and take recruiting command while I'm gone, and I'm ready." And he looked at me and said, "You're staying right here." Oh gosh, I was just crushed. But he told me, "Ted, I promise you're going to learn some things and have some experiences that are going to serve you well a lot longer in the future." And of course, I just thought he was blowing smoke up my rear end, trying to make me feel a little bit better at that point. But in reality, probably the best learning leadership crucible I was ever in. You really had to learn to lead in a distributed environment. You had to learn to communicate. You had to learn to deal with the public. And it was just an incredible experience. It was tough. It was a miserably hard duty, doubled even more so when you saw your friends doing what you'd all trained to do. But it was a great learning lesson. And I will tell you, I'm probably as close or closer to the Marines I served with in Nashville than any other group of Marines I've ever served with, other than the ones I was in combat with early on with Bravo 112. How much the recruiting duty would set me up for battalion command, because I had Marines scattered all over the Pacific and the Indian Ocean, from at one point Vladivostok, Russia, Thailand, Philippines, Indonesia, all the way to Iraq and Afghanistan. So to be able to communicate, command, and control was a challenge. But if I hadn't had that recruiting experience to teach me how to do some of those things, it would have been probably even more challenging. And really had an opportunity, when the big tsunami hit in Thailand, the Philippines, and in Indonesia, we took the battalion down there. We were scattered all over that area, but I really saw the true benevolence of our country. A place that we really didn't have a lot of interest in. When I say interest, national interest in that area, but all that our country did and all that our country gave just to help some fellow human beings who were in just a horrible situation really showed me the magnitude of our country and really what our country is all about, the character of our country and our citizens. I was fortunate enough to go from there back to Washington, D.C., where I was at the National War College, and I served in the Pentagon. And I led the team that was responsible for current operations in Afghanistan and Pakistan. And as you can imagine, what a learning crucible that was at that time in our history. And then from there, I went to Afghanistan. I served first as a deputy operations officer, then the operations officer for the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force forward in Afghanistan, which was a multinational force of about 20,000 NATO, non-NATO Marines, and all the other services. Just, again, really learned some lessons, so much about finding common ground. You think about these people that had all these different national interests, different political interests, different personal interests. And how do you get such a wide-ranging or such an eclectic group to accomplish a single mission? And you have to find common ground. And that was a lesson I learned from Admiral Mullen when I was serving in the Pentagon, and it really came to fruition in Afghanistan. And then I came back from Afghanistan and commanded the Marine Corps' 8th Marine Corps District, which was a recruiting command and centered in the western U.S. and a 10-state area there. And from there, I retired and joined Home Depot. And, that was quite a transition, as you can imagine, going from the Marine Corps to Home Depot. But I worked my way through that, and here I am.
Awesome. So now you didn't actually go like the Home Depot, down the road from you. Can you still hear me? Okay. You actually went corporate Home Depot.
Correct.
So,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. I was going to turn it over to you.
It's kind of funny how that worked out, and maybe life just works this way. But I really had no idea of working for Home Depot. Never entered my mind. And you can attest to this with your years of service. You're always gone, whether you're deployed someplace out of the country or even just training for a month or two someplace locally. If anything needed to be done, Melissa, my wife, took care of it. So I am not Mr. Handyman by any stretch of the imagination. So, Home Depot really just wasn't on my radar. And I've worked through a group called American Corporate Partners, and I would certainly recommend that for people who are transitioning. It's a mentorship program, and I had a mentor in Atlanta and who ironically worked for Home Depot. And I was on my way to New York for an interview with a bank, a Wall Street position. And quite frankly, I thought I was going to take it. And I stopped by to visit with my mentor, and we decided we would meet at a Home Depot store. And we were in the back room, and he had to step out for a minute to take a phone call. While he did, I looked around the training area, and I saw this big circle. It had values. Our core values, or the value wheel is what it's called. And I looked at that, and I never expected to see that in corporate America. So it really struck me. And I thought to myself, I've always lived as a Marine by honor, courage, and commitment, our core values. And although I didn't see that in Home Depot, those same words, honor, courage, and commitment, it was really the same thing in essence. It was focused on other people, not on you, but on others, on making other people better, making your team better, making your company better, and really serving others and being the best you can in that environment. And it really made me pause and think, because in the banking industry, I hadn't really seen that same culture or that same focus on values. Not to say it wasn't there, I just hadn't seen it. The other thing I saw was this thing called an inverted pyramid, and it had the leader at the bottom and all the people who work for the company and the customers were up on the top of the pyramid, which was obviously inverted. And I thought, this is just like being a Marine. The leader eats last. You take care of your people and you facilitate their success. That's the only reason you have leaders, to help make others better, help them achieve their goals. Man, I was sold after seeing that. Home Depot hadn't given me an offer or anything, but it really made me rethink what I was looking for in a job. To that point, you're thinking, this really neat job in New York, a Wall Street job sounds great. And I went up and I went through 2 days of interviews, and I kept this Home Depot thing in the back of my mind. Not necessarily Home Depot, but the values and the culture. And I thought, I really need to change my mindset here and not worry so much about the corporation, the title, the location, as much as I need to look at my values and did they align with those company values. And so when it came down to it, I told the last guy I talked to, I said, thank you, but I'm not sure this is for me. And you can imagine, I'd never had a job other than being a Marine. And here's the first job I was ever offered. And I said no to it. And you can, the knot in your stomach is like that. And I'm thinking as I walked back down, the street to my hotel through Manhattan, I was feeling good. And at the same time, I was thinking, what in the world have I done? Will I ever get another job offer? Maybe I've just punted this in the stands. But I had another offer, and I was talking to Home Depot and another offer someplace else. But I just kept coming back to this culture thing with Home Depot, and it finally, it just worked out. So when my official retirement date came, I started working with Home Depot that same month. And, no company's perfect. It's just like the Marine Corps. I love the Marine Corps, and it certainly had its warts from time to time. But really, you're looking for people who are trying to do the right thing. And that was just a good fit for me. And I've been very, very fortunate to be in that environment.
That's awesome. So now you went through corporate America, from the Marine Corps to corporate, and you've worked yourself up the ladder. You're now correct me if I'm wrong, divisional staffing manager for the Western Division, correct? I
am. I initially started off in the store as a co-manager, and it was It was a lot like being a company commander or a battery commander. You have a group of people, about 135 to 140, 150 people at any given time. But the key thing was learning how business worked. Leadership is leadership. Whether you're leading a large organization in the military, in the government, or in corporate America, taking care of people is pretty basic, and helping people be successful. But it is totally new. So you have to learn how the business works. You have to learn the intricacies of business. And so I was very fortunate to be able to do that for about a year and a half. And then I had an opportunity to teach leadership at Home Depot University. And of course, that was just an absolute honor to be able to do that, at Home Depot. And then just in the last 6 or 8 months, started this new role responsible for staffing the Western Division for a merchandising organization, which is about 27,000 people in Home Depot. That's a company within a company, basically. So I spend a lot of time traveling back and forth to the West Coast, the Rocky Mountain area, all the way California, Hawaii, Alaska, that part of the country.
That's awesome. No, so I want to talk to you about your transition. So, you were in the Marine Corps a very long time. I was Air Force for 13 years almost. Even guys that go through that do, they're 4 and out. It's that transition to me is very important and very key to the success of the veteran, getting out of the service. So do you feel like you were prepared when you were getting out?
Absolutely not. I thought I was, but in reality I wasn't. And I thought it would be very simple. The simplest thing turned out to be the hardest thing. Where in the world are we going to live? We had 17 moves in the Marine Corps. And so Melissa and I started thinking, where are we going to go? Where do we want to go? And we looked, and we have truly, every duty station, we found something that we enjoyed. I don't think we ever had one that we would not go back to. Great friends, great community, etc. And that was very difficult. So do you choose job or do you choose community? So we finally decided, both Melissa and I grew up together. We went to high school together. Our parents were still in Commerce, Georgia. So we decided to look in Georgia because we'd never lived here as adults. I thought, well, let's be near our family. And so that just happened to work with Home Depot. But that's a tough decision. I would tell you, if I could give a bit of advice to anybody, I always thought that I should never think about what I would do after the Marine Corps. I never wanted to be distracted. And lo and behold, it came time to make that decision. And I wish that I had put some thought into it. And, hindsight being 2020, you think about this. I taught tactics. And, when you think about defensive tactics, you have a primary position, an alternate position, and a supplementary position. Well, here I was. I did this in the Marine Corps. Your primary position is where you're going to fight from or accomplish your main mission. Your supplementary position to accomplish the same mission from a different location. But your alternate is from someplace else in a totally different mission. I never planned for that alternate mission in my personal life. And, I should have done that, and I really didn't. The second thing, if I could offer a bit of advice, something I absolutely screwed up, is I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I'd never thought about it. I just wanted to be in charge.
Right.
Melissa really helped me. She put it in a great context for me one day. She said, listen, think about where you were in the Marine Corps. Would you bring a Home Depot executive and have him run your operations in Afghanistan? She said, this guy led a large organization, did great things, but would you have him doing that? I said, well, no. She said, well, think about yourself. Would Home Depot have you running Home Depot? Although I like to think I could. Running Home Depot, I thought, that would be a smart decision. So you're going to have to take a step back and really go through basic training again and learn a new role, learn a new mission, and it's different. So it's something you have to swallow. And the other thing, I've been working with some professional athletes on a different project here lately. And there's something that's you really don't think about it. You don't think of yourself as special. But the position that you're in, you have a lot of things to help you do your job. And you don't have that when you get out in the civilian community. You don't have a secretary. You don't have a staff. You don't have an airplane. You don't have a driver. You don't get those things because you're special, but you are entrusted with a very special responsibility. And that's taking care of people. And you needed those things to help you do the thing that only you could do, that nobody else in that organization could do. So those were tools. They weren't perks. But you don't have those tools when you get out. And you've got to come to grips with that and figure out how do you operate without having other people do what you might think are kind of trivial tasks sometimes. Those fall on your shoulders. So it's truly a mindset change. And you have to take a bit of humility along with that to really make that work. And I've also found that people want veterans, people value veterans, but they really don't know how to employ us and how to put the right face in the right space for the veteran and for the company.
Absolutely. You brought up a good point about trying to figure out what you want to do after your time in service. I had Gene South on from Higher Served 2 nights ago. And awesome episode if you check it out, if you want to check it out. She said that's the first thing that I ask veterans when they come in. What do you want to do? You got to figure out what do you want to do. Because you have skills from the military, and we have to, see what other skills you still need.
Yes.
Because there's a lot of skills that we do get from the military, and some do transfer over. But a lot of them don't. Like when I was in, I was an aircraft mechanic and I was a drill instructor, TI. Not a whole lot of fixing airplanes in what I'm doing now, So it's a new career. Definitely have to find a different path. So I completely understand what you're saying.
The thing I found, Nick, that really I think is really underestimated is the adaptability. Working on the aircraft, you had to adapt, you had to think, you had to make decisions, and you had a tremendous amount of responsibility. And you didn't think of it because it's just what you did, but the enormity of what you did was incredible. I mean, you had somebody's life in your hands every time you worked on that aircraft. You had millions of dollars that you were responsible for. People don't realize that. People don't realize the pressure that you've worked under, the decisions you've had to make. And oh, by the way, we trusted you to make those decisions. And I think those are the intangibles that are very applicable in corporate America. And I don't think corporate America fully appreciates or understands that. The other thing, think about it. You went from being a mechanic to a drill instructor. They're not very close. They don't have a lot of overlap there.
Not at all.
You did it exceptionally well.
Right.
Think about all the folks that have served. You never do the same thing every day. You'll have multiple jobs, multiple leadership roles. You have to figure out how to bring people together and solve problems. And really, that's what corporate America is about, solving problems. That's why you hire leaders, not for the mundane and the easy things, but to bring people together, find commonality, find goals, and help people achieve those. And I think that's what we bring, and I don't think we realize fully how well trained we are and how good we collectively are at doing that. And the other thing is trusting people. We learn how to build trust and allow people to do their jobs, because in a distributed environment, you're not able to look over my shoulder. I have to trust you to go do something and make that decision. And I think that's a huge intangible that a lot of leaders don't know how to do. And it's a very challenging thing to learn.
Absolutely. Now, you were saying that you had a mentor. Do you recommend that people in the military, once they figure out what they want to be when they grow up, get a mentor? And how would you recommend, going about finding a mentor?
I tell you, I've got to put another plug in for American Corporate Partners.
Okay.
It is a fantastic organization, but that really helped me. What they do, if you're not familiar with it, it is volunteers from corporate America basically give their time, they commit to a year to helping a veteran who is transitioning. They're not there to help them get a job. That is not the goal, but they're there to help them network, help them build a resume, help them with some of those skill sets so that they can transition in a more smooth or an easier fashion. We think we can do anything, and we can, but corporate America has a culture just like each of the services has its own culture. And you're not going to change that culture. You've got to learn how to fit in that culture and take all the benefits that you bring and link that to that culture. And that's what that mentor can help you do. The other thing is the networking piece. And I always thought that was a bit hokey when I kept hearing people talk about networking. But I will tell you, that's the way the world works. You saw it through relationships in Afghanistan and war fighting. I saw it in the Pentagon. I saw it everywhere I went through the Marine Corps. Relationships matter. And that's all networking is making relationships, connecting people, connecting ideas. And that's the way ultimately that you're going to find a job. And that's the way you're going to ultimately be successful once you find a job.
Absolutely. One thing I want to touch on too is, you progressed through your career in the military, and in the military, you knew, okay, I need to do this. I need to do this. I know I'm either testing or going against a board, depending on branch of service and, enlisted or officer. But you knew there was like a roadmap planned out for you to make rank. Everybody, it's not a secret. From going from the military into the corporate world, at least from my experience, I haven't really seen, the outline like that. So, what do you think, like what recommendations would you have in comparing the two, for the veterans out there that want to climb the corporate ladder? What do you have to do to make that happen? Great
point. They're a bit opposite, in the different services. Like you said, there was a path, and you knew what you needed to do. You knew what wickets you needed to go through, and how to prepare for those different wickets along the way. Whether it was selection for a school, selection for promotion, selection for a command, and you pretty much understood what you needed to do if you were going to get that along the way, and the sacrifices it took to get there. Corporate America doesn't have it laid out, which is good and bad. It's good, in fact, that it's wide open. But if you as a veteran come to corporate America and you're expecting somebody to hold your hand and say, do this job, and this job, and this will get you to your dream job of X, that's not going to happen. You're going to need some help. And I would recommend once you get into that corporate environment, whatever it is, find somebody that you believe in, find somebody that you trust, and ask them to help you navigate. They're not going to be able to get you promoted, but they can help you understand the culture and what you need to do to arrive at that end state or that location that you want to be. And it's a challenge, but you just need to put your hand in there and let folks know that you want to grow. One thing I found is a lot of people are very complacent. They're happy at where they are. And they find a job and they want to spend 20 or 30 years there. And if you stay there and you don't put your hand in there and say, I want to grow, I want to do a little extra, you're going to stay there. And with that goes PME. We all grew up doing the professional military education. I mean, that's who we were. We're always reading a book. We're always learning something. We're always trying to get better mentally and physically. There's no expectation of that in corporate America. That's on you. And I would highly recommend that you keep your PME program up. It might change. It might not be warfighting 101. It might not be, tactics. It might not necessarily be history. But what business are you in? What are your products? Are you reading the Wall Street Journal? Are you reading The Economist? Those things are just as vital as reading Clausewitz or Sun Tzu. And it's important. and physical fitness as well. You know, the more physically fit you are, the more mentally fit you are, and that never goes away.
Absolutely. Great advice. So, Ted, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. We're running out of time now, but I just want to thank everybody for watching. You definitely gave some great advice, some great insight, you know, going from the military into the corporate world. You know, I hope people get a lot of value out of what you've said here today. So I want to thank you again for coming on, and everybody out there, you know, thank you for tuning in. If you missed any previous episode, you can go to a YouTube channel and check them out, and definitely give us a watch. Give Ted a shout out. You know, let him know he's doing good things out there. So,
thanks, Nick. Have a great evening.
Thank you. And we'll talk to everyone. We'll see everybody on the next broadcast.